Before we begin, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss important global updates like this one. What if a single conflict could shake the global economy, threaten energy supplies, and push the Middle East closer to a much wider war? Right now, the conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran has entered a dangerous new phase. Military strikes are increasing, regional tensions are rising, and more countries are being pulled into the crisis. But the biggest question everyone is asking right now is this: is the world moving toward a larger regional war, or is there still a chance for diplomacy to stop it? Stay with us until the end, because the latest developments could have major consequences not only for the Middle East, but for the entire world. The conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran has now reached day 16. And the impact of what has been described as Operation Epic Fury is spreading far beyond the battlefield. Over the past several hours, both American and Israeli forces have carried out additional large-scale strikes inside Iran. These operations targeted what officials described as key infrastructure linked to the Iranian government. Residents in the Iranian capital Tehran reported hearing multiple explosions overnight, raising fears that the military campaign could intensify even further in the coming days. At the same time, political leaders are sending mixed signals about whether a diplomatic solution is even possible. Former U.S. President Donald Trump stated that the United States is currently not ready to negotiate an agreement to end the war. His comments suggest that the conflict may continue for the foreseeable future. Meanwhile, the effects of the conflict are being felt in several neighboring countries. In southern Lebanon, overnight airstrikes reportedly killed several people as Israel continued its campaign against Hezbollah, the armed group that is supported by Iran. Israel has repeatedly stated that its operations are focused on preventing Hezbollah from launching attacks into Israeli territory. However, the situation has raised concerns that the conflict could spread into an even larger regional confrontation. Despite diplomatic efforts, progress toward negotiations appears slow. French President Emmanuel Macron recently indicated that the Lebanese government might be open to direct talks with Israel, and he even offered Paris as a potential location for negotiations. But Israeli officials have made it clear that no formal negotiations are planned at this time. As diplomatic tensions continue, military action has intensified. A wave of missiles struck parts of central Israel, including areas near Tel Aviv. Several vehicles were damaged, and fires broke out in residential neighborhoods after one missile reportedly carried cluster-style munitions. While Israel's air defense systems intercepted many of the incoming missiles, some were still able to reach populated areas. These attacks highlight the increasing complexity of the conflict and the risks facing civilians on all sides. Iran's Revolutionary Guard also issued a strong warning, threatening to pursue Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Such statements have further increased concerns that the conflict could escalate into a much more direct confrontation between major powers. Another major development in the war involves Kark Island, one of Iran's most important oil export hubs. According to statements from Washington, U.S. military strikes have severely damaged infrastructure linked to this facility. Kark Island plays a critical role in Iran's economy, as a large percentage of the country's oil exports pass through the island. Because of this, the location has now become one of the most strategically important targets in the conflict. Some analysts believe that targeting energy infrastructure could increase economic pressure on Iran. However, others warn that such actions could also lead to retaliation that disrupts global oil markets. Now here's something that makes this situation even more serious. One of the most critical locations involved in the conflict is the Strait of Hormuz. This narrow waterway is responsible for transporting a huge portion of the world's oil supply. If this route becomes blocked or unsafe, it could cause major disruptions to global energy markets, pushing fuel prices higher across many countries. And right now, oil tankers are already beginning to slow down or change their routes because of security fears. So the question becomes, could this conflict trigger a global energy crisis? Keep watching, because the answer might surprise you. Recent reports indicate that oil and gas tankers have been delaying their movements through the Strait of Hormuz due to concerns about potential attacks. This hesitation has already started pushing global oil prices upward. Energy experts say that keeping the shipping route open is now one of the top priorities for many governments. Some analysts argue that the simplest solution would be de-escalation, meaning that diplomatic negotiations would need to reduce tensions quickly. But at the moment, that outcome still seems uncertain. The conflict is also creating serious concerns among Gulf Arab states. These countries depend heavily on energy exports and petrochemical industries. If the conflict continues to expand, their infrastructure could also become vulnerable to attack. Many governments in the region had hoped the conflict would end quickly. However, as the war enters its third week with no clear resolution, fears about economic damage and regional instability are growing. Officials across the Gulf region are now closely monitoring the situation, preparing their air defenses and coordinating security measures. Overnight, Israel carried out additional airstrikes targeting locations connected to Hezbollah. Lebanese officials say the conflict has already caused significant damage across parts of the country. Reports indicate that hundreds of people have lost their lives since the beginning of the latest escalation. According to international organizations, hundreds of thousands of civilians have also been displaced, forced to leave their homes due to the ongoing fighting. The humanitarian impact of the conflict is becoming more visible with each passing day. Hezbollah leaders insist they are responding to what they describe as aggression against their country. However, critics argue that the group is acting in coordination with Iran, which complicates the political situation inside Lebanon. Some Lebanese citizens are increasingly frustrated, believing that their country has been pulled into a conflict that they never wanted. This internal pressure is another factor that could influence future diplomatic discussions. Meanwhile, Iran has also been accused of launching missile and drone attacks towards several Gulf states. These attacks have caused damage in certain areas and forced authorities to activate air defense systems. The United Arab Emirates reported intercepting several incoming missiles and drones. Although the number of attacks appears to have decreased slightly in recent days, the threat has not disappeared. Military analysts say there could be several explanations for this change, including strategic adjustments or possible damage to military resources. Interestingly, Iranian officials have recently issued statements suggesting that they are still open to diplomatic initiatives. Some leaders have emphasized the importance of maintaining dialogue with neighboring countries. At the same time, governments in the Gulf region have expressed their desire to resolve the crisis through logic and diplomacy rather than continued military confrontation. Whether these diplomatic signals will lead to real negotiations remains unclear. Beyond the political and military developments, ordinary people inside Iran are also facing enormous uncertainty. Communication from within the country has become more difficult due to internet restrictions and security concerns. However, some residents have shared their experiences with journalists. One man from Tehran described how he moved his family to the countryside after hearing the first explosions. At first, he believed the conflict might bring major political change. But now, he says his hopes have faded, and he worries that the war will simply make life harder for ordinary citizens. Rising prices, shortages of essential goods, and fear of instability are all part of the daily reality for many people. Others remain cautiously hopeful that the crisis could eventually lead to a different future for their country. But for now, uncertainty continues to dominate everyday life. As the conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran moves deeper into its third week, the stakes are becoming higher for everyone involved. Military strikes continue, diplomatic efforts remain uncertain, and the risk of a wider regional conflict has not disappeared. Energy markets, global security, and millions of lives across the Middle East could all be affected by what happens next. Will diplomacy eventually calm the situation? Or will tensions continue to rise, drawing even more countries into the crisis? The world is watching closely as events continue to unfold. If you found this video helpful, make sure you like the video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel for more global news and in-depth analysis. And let us know in the comments, do you think this conflict will end through diplomacy, or could it escalate into a much larger war? Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.